She found my journal. I was sitting at the front desk at 3 a.m. when the elevator dinged, and she stepped out in a pale blue silk robe, her bare feet silent on the cold marble. She walked straight to me, carrying the black leather book I thought I'd lost, her scent of citrus and cold air cutting through the stale lobby. Her eyes, usually so sharp, were puffy and red-rimmed when she finally placed it between us. "You wrote about me on every page," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I could only manage. I couldn't help it. Because, she later confessed, no one had ever looked at me that closely. If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments. Because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. The lobby of a high-rise at 3 in the morning has a specific kind of silence. It's not empty, exactly. It's heavy. It hums with the sound of the air conditioning vent above the front desk, a low, steady rattle that gets into your bones after a few hours. I was sitting there, listening to that hum, my hand resting on the cool marble counter. Under my other hand was the journal. Worn brown leather, soft from months of being shoved into my back pocket or hidden under paperwork. The pen was still in my hand. I had just finished a sentence. The ink was probably still wet. Then the elevator dinged. It's a soft sound, polite, designed not to wake the wealthy people sleeping on floors 2 through 20. But at 3 a.m., it sounds like a gunshot. I looked up. I expected a drunk resident stumbling home from a gala, or maybe the guy from 7C walking his insomniac golden retriever. But it was her. The woman from 19B. She wasn't wearing the sharp gray suit she usually wore to destroy people in courtrooms. She was in a silk robe, pale blue, tied tightly at the waist. Her feet were bare. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders, looking like she'd been pulling at it. She didn't walk to the mailboxes. She didn't look at the door to check the weather. She walked straight to my desk. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell it, that scent she always carried. Citrus and cold air. It cut right through the smell of floor wax and old coffee. Her eyes were puffy, red-rimmed. She wasn't wearing makeup, and for the first time since I'd started working here, she looked her age. She looked real. In her hand, she was holding a black leather book. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. It wasn't the journal under my hand. It was the other one. The one I thought I'd lost 3 days ago. The one I'd torn my apartment apart looking for. She placed it on the marble counter between us. Her hand lingered on the cover for a second, her fingers pale against the dark leather. She looked at me. Her voice was just a whisper, but in that echo chamber of a lobby, it was loud. "How long, Ethan?" I couldn't breathe. My throat felt like it was full of sand. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor, but I didn't know where to go. "Miss Hartman," I started. My voice cracked. "I can explain." She shook her head, just once. A small, tired movement. "I read it," she said. "I read the whole thing, twice." I gripped the edge of the desk. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to beg her not to call the building management board. I wanted to tell her I was just a stupid guy with a night shift job and too much time to think. But she wasn't looking at me like I was a stalker. She was looking at me like I was the only person in the world who knew her name. "You wrote about me on every page," she said. The air between us felt thin, electric. I looked at her hands. No wedding ring tonight, just bare fingers resting on my words. "I couldn't help it," I whispered. "And that's the truth. If you want to understand why a guy like me, 29, broke, living in a basement studio, would risk his entire life for a woman like Lena Hartman. I have to take you back to the beginning, back before she found the book, back to when I was just the invisible man behind the desk. 3 months ago, I didn't know her name. I didn't know she drank Earl Grey tea in the mornings, or that she hated the sound of rain against glass. I was just starting the night shift. I needed the money. My sister Marisa told me I was crazy for taking the graveyard slot, said it would mess with my head. But I liked the quiet. I wanted to be a writer, and writers need quiet. Or so I told myself. The building is one of those glass and steel needles in the city center. Expensive. Cold. The kind of place where people pay $5,000 a month to never have to talk to their neighbors. My job was simple. Sit at the desk from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., monitor the cameras, log the packages, smile if anyone walked by. Mostly, I just watched. It's strange what you notice when you are invisible. You see the husbands coming home late with lipstick on their collars that doesn't match their wives. You see the teenagers sneaking out. You see who drinks alone. I started writing it down. Just observations at first. Sketches of people. I called it the fishbowl. That's what Mrs. Alvarez called it. She's the lady in 3F. 63 years old, retired teacher, knows everyone's business. Ethan, she told me on my third night, leaning over the desk with a bag of groceries. You have nice eyes, too observant. Be careful what you see in this place. Some people here, they pay a lot of money to be hidden. I should have listened to her. That was the night I first really saw Lena. It was raining. A Tuesday. The lobby was dead quiet, just the hum of the AC and the distant swish of tires on wet pavement outside. The automatic doors slid open with a hiss. She walked in. She was wearing a long trench coat, belted tight. She was carrying a leather briefcase that looked heavy. She didn't look at me. Most of them didn't. I was just furniture. Good evening, I said. My voice was low. I try not to startle them. She paused, just for a fraction of a second. She glanced at the desk, gave a tight nod, not really at me, just at the space I occupied, and kept walking. But as she passed, the air shifted. That smell, oranges and winter air, sharp, clean. She pressed the elevator button. I watched her reflection in the glass doors. Her shoulders were up by her ears. She was holding herself like she was bracing for a collision. When the elevator arrived, she stepped in. As the doors closed, she let out a breath. I saw her shoulders drop. Her head tipped back against the mirrored wall of the elevator car. For a split second, before the metal doors slid shut, she looked exhausted. Not just tired. Empty. I pulled my journal out from under the desk. I wrote the date, and then I wrote 19B. She wears armor to work, but she takes it off in the elevator. I didn't call her Lena then. I just called her Elle. Over the next few weeks, Elle became the main character of my nights. I started tracking her without meaning to. It wasn't creepy, or at least I didn't want it to be. It was just, she was the only thing in the building that felt complex. She always came home late, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., sometimes midnight. She was always alone. I learned the rhythm of her life through the sound of her heels on the marble floor. Click, click, click. Fast, efficient, don't talk to me. But sometimes, late at night, the rhythm slowed down. One night, about a month in, she stopped at the desk to pick up a package. I grabbed the logbook. I knew her name from the mail, obviously. Lena Hartman. Here you go, Miss Hartman, I said, pronouncing it like Hartman. She looked up from her phone. Her eyes were gray, like the ocean on a cloudy day. Intelligent, sharp, but guarded. It's Hartman, she said softly. Like heart, but soft on the end. German. I felt the heat rise up my neck. Sorry, Miss Hartman. She didn't leave immediately. She stood there, tapping her keycard against the counter. You're new, she said. It wasn't a question. Been here a month, I said. You're always here, she said. She looked at my name tag. Ethan. She said my name. It sounds stupid, I know. But when you wear a uniform, people stop using your name. You become, "Excuse me," or "Can you help me?" "I work the nights," I said. "It's quiet." She let out a small, dry laugh. "Quiet must be nice." She looked at me then. Really looked at me. She noticed the pen in my hand. She noticed the way I was leaning away from the drafty door. "Well," she said. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Ms. Hartman." She walked to the elevator. I watched her go. When I sat back down, my heart was beating a little faster. Not because she was beautiful, though she was in a way that made your chest ache. She was beautiful like an old song you can't get out of your head. It was because she had corrected me. She wanted me to say her name right. I opened the journal. She corrected me. Soft voice. She hates the noise. She noticed I'm always here. I wrote for an hour that night. I described the gray of her eyes. I described the way her finger tapped the keycard. I couldn't stop. The cracks started showing in the second month. You can't hide a bad marriage from the night concierge. We see everything. I met the husband, Daniel. He was a consultant of some kind, traveling constantly. He looked like every other guy in the building, expensive haircut, expensive watch, smile that didn't reach his eyes. He treated me like a vending machine. Package. Taxi. Door. Never please or thank you. One night, I was writing. I'd started trying to turn my observations into actual stories, scenes with dialogue, when the automatic doors opened. Lena walked in. She was carrying 2 heavy grocery bags, the paper kind, overflowing with leafy greens and wine bottles. She looked like she was struggling. Daniel walked in 3 feet behind her, empty hands, checking his phone. "I don't see why you didn't just order it," he was saying. His voice was low, irritated. "Because I wanted to cook, Daniel," she said. She didn't stop walking. "You never cook," he said. "We're going out tomorrow anyway." "I'm not going to that dinner," she said. She stopped near the elevator. One of the bags was slipping. I stood up. "Ms. Hartman, do you need a hand?" Daniel looked at me like a lamp had just started talking. "We're fine," he snapped. Lena looked at me. Her face was flushed. She looked embarrassed. Not for herself, but for him. "Thank you, Ethan," she said. Her voice was tight. "I've got it." They got into the elevator. The doors closed, but not before I heard Daniel say, "Why do you talk to the staff like that?" I sat back down. I felt a flash of anger, hot and sudden. I pulled the journal toward me. I pressed the pen into the paper so hard it almost tore. "He doesn't deserve her," I wrote. "He looks at her like she's an obligation. He doesn't see the way her hands shake when she's holding something heavy. He doesn't see the way she bites her lip to keep from screaming." I wrote a scene where she left him. I wrote a scene where she dropped the bags on the floor, the wine bottles shattering on the marble, red wine spreading like blood, and she just walked away. I wrote myself into the scene. I was just the guy who handed her a towel. But in the story, she smiled at me. A real smile. I knew I was crossing a line. Marissa had warned me. We met for coffee the next day, and I showed her a different story, one about a guy on a train. But she saw through me. "You're writing about a woman again," she said, stirring her latte. "The sad one? In the penthouse?" "She's not sad," I lied. "She's interesting." "Ethan," Marissa said, giving me that look only big sisters have. "Don't fall in love with a paycheck, and definitely don't fall in love with a resident. You're the help. They don't see you." "She sees me," I said. Marissa sighed. "That's what worries me." Then came the night everything changed. It was a Thursday, a bad night. The air pressure was low, giving everyone a headache. Lena came in at 1 a.m. She wasn't wearing a coat, just a dress, sleeveless, even though it was 40 degrees out. Her arms were wrapped around herself. She walked past the desk without looking at me. I heard a sniffle, a small, wet sound. I watched her wait for the elevator. She pressed the button 3 times, fast. Then she leaned her forehead against the cool metal of the elevator frame. She was crying. Not loud sobbing, just quiet, shaking tears. I should have stayed seated. It's the protocol. Don't interfere. But I couldn't watch it. Ms. Hartman, she jumped. She turned around, wiping her eyes quickly with the back of her hand. I'm fine, she said. Her voice was thick. I know, I said. I came out from behind the desk. But the elevator is slow tonight. Maintenance is working on car 2. It was a lie. If you need a minute, I said, gesturing toward the staff hallway. The break room is empty. It's not fancy, but it's quiet. No cameras in there. She looked at the elevator, then at me. She looked trapped. I can't go upstairs yet, she whispered. He's still awake. Come on, I said gently. I led her into the break room. It's a tiny room. Smells like old coffee grounds and bleach. There's a plastic table, 2 chairs, and a vending machine. I can make you tea, I said. It's just bag tea, but it's hot. Thank you, Ethan, she said. She sat down at the wobbly table. She looked so out of place, this elegant woman in her silk dress sitting under the buzzing fluorescent light. I turned to the kettle. Then the phone on my belt buzzed. It was the front desk line. I have to grab that, I said. I'll be right back. Stay as long as you want. I rushed out. It was Mrs. Alvarez complaining about a noise on the 4th floor. It took me 20 minutes to deal with it, checking the floor, logging the complaint, calming her down. When I finally got back to the lobby, the elevator was moving. Going up. I walked into the break room. Ms. Hartman. Empty. The chair was pushed back. The tea water was cold. And the table was empty. My blood ran cold. I had been writing in there earlier. On my break. I left the journal on the table. I spun around, checking the floor, the chair, the top of the vending machine. Maybe it fell. Maybe I moved it. But I knew I hadn't. I had left it open. Open to the page where I described the way she looked when she was angry. The page where I wrote, I wonder what it would feel like to be the one she comes home to. It was gone. I ran to the security room. It's a closet, really, behind the desk. I pulled up the camera feed for the hallway outside the break room. I rewound the footage. There she was. 1:15 a.m. Lena stepped out of the break room. She looked calmer. She had stopped crying. In her hands, she was holding the black book. She paused in the hallway. She looked at the cover. Then she opened it. On the grainy black and white screen, I watched her read. She stood there for 2 minutes. She flipped a page, then another. I saw her hand go to her mouth. Then she closed the book. She didn't put it back. She didn't leave it on the desk. She clutched it to her chest, right over her heart, and walked to the elevator. I sat in the dark security room, staring at the monitor, feeling like I was going to throw up. She had it. She had everything. My thoughts, my obsession, the way I tracked her schedule, the way I analyzed her marriage. She was a lawyer. She could ruin me. I'd be fired by morning. Probably sued. Definitely restraining ordered. I spent the rest of the shift pacing the lobby. Every time the elevator moved, I flinched. I imagined Daniel coming down, shouting. I imagined the police. But nothing happened. The building stayed quiet. When Reed, the day guy, came in at 6 a.m., he looked at me. You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost. I didn't sleep well, I said. I walked home in the gray morning light. The city was waking up, Horns honking, people rushing to work. I felt like I was walking underwater. She has the journal. She knows. I didn't want to go back the next night. I almost called in sick. I almost quit over email, but I needed the money, and I needed to know. I arrived at 10 p.m. The lobby was the same. The smell of floor wax, the hum of the AC. I checked my locker. Empty. I checked the lost and found. Nothing. I sat at the desk, waiting for the axe to fall. Mrs. Alvarez came by with cookies. "You look pale, Ethan. Eat." I ate a cookie. It tasted like sawdust. Midnight came, then 1 a.m. She didn't come down. Was she showing it to Daniel? Were they laughing at me, or was she disgusted? "The help is obsessed with me, darling. Look at this pathetic drivel." The thought made my insides twist. I tried to do my job. I sorted mail. I watched the monitors. But my eyes kept drifting to the elevator indicator. 19. 19. 19. It stayed there. 2 days passed. I was living in a state of constant, low-grade panic. I jumped every time the phone rang. Then came the third night. It was late, almost 3 a.m. The lobby was deserted. I was trying to read a paperback just to distract myself, but the words were swimming. Ding. My head snapped up. The doors slid open. And there she was. The blue robe, the bare feet, the puffy eyes. She walked to the desk. She put the journal down. "How long, Ethan?" I couldn't help it. We stared at each other. The silence stretched, thin and tight as a wire. She took a breath. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked searching. "You're braver on paper than you are in person," she said softly. I swallowed. "I know. It's easier to be honest when no one is listening." "I was listening," she said, "for 3 days." She pushed the book toward me. "I didn't tell Daniel," she said, "and I'm not going to report you." I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 72 hours. "Thank you. I promise I'll never write about you again. I'll burn it." "Don't," she said sharply. I looked at her, surprised. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. Her expression was vulnerable, open in a way I'd never seen. "No one has ever looked at me that closely," she whispered. "Not even him, especially not him." She reached out and tapped the cover of the journal with one finger. "I left some notes," she said, "in the margins. I hope you don't mind." "You wrote in it?" "Just thoughts," she said. She pulled her robe tighter, suddenly looking self-conscious. "You got some things wrong, about how I feel. I corrected them." She stepped back. The elevator was waiting. "Good night, Ethan," she said. "Good night, Lena," I said. It just slipped out. She didn't correct me. She gave me a small, sad smile, turned, and walked back into the elevator. As the doors closed, I opened the journal. My handwriting was there, messy black ink scrawled across the pages. But there, in the margins, was precise, delicate pencil script. I flipped to the page where I had written, "She looks like she has everything, but her hands are always cold." Next to it, in pencil, she had written, "My hands are cold because no one ever holds them." I stared at the words. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wasn't just writing a story anymore. She was writing back. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed in my basement studio, listening to the radiator hiss, reading her notes over and over again. Her handwriting was delicate, sharp, precise, the kind of handwriting that belonged to someone who never made mistakes. But the words were messy. I had written, "She walks like she's trying not to make a sound." She answered, "I walk like I'm afraid I'll break the floor." I had written, She looks at the elevator numbers like they're a countdown. She answered. They are. I went into work early the next evening. I needed to be there before the rush. I needed to feel the lobby around me, to see if it felt different now that I knew she was haunting it too. I sat at the desk, the journal open in my lap, hidden by the high marble counter. I traced her pencil marks with my thumb. It felt illicit, intimate, like I was touching her skin. Around 10 p.m. the elevator dinged. I stiffened. I slid the journal under the blotter. It was her. She was dressed for a gala or a dinner, something expensive, black silk, diamonds that caught the cold lobby light. She looked armored, untouchable. She walked toward the desk to drop off a dry cleaning slip. She didn't look at me, not directly. "Good evening, Ethan," she said. Her voice was cool, professional. "Good evening, Mrs. Hartman." She paused as she set the slip on the marble. Her hand lingered for a second near the edge of the desk. "Did you review the documentation?" she asked softly. She wasn't talking about the dry cleaning. "I did," I said. My throat felt dry. "Your edits were helpful." The corner of her mouth twitched, a microscopic smile. "I thought the character development was lacking in the second act," she murmured. "She seemed too passive. But I suppose you can only write what you see." Then she turned and walked out the glass doors into the waiting black car. I watched her go. My heart was thumping a rhythm against my ribs. Reed came in 10 minutes later to grab his charger. He saw me staring at the glass doors. "Earth to Ethan," he laughed, slapping the counter. "You look like you're seeing ghosts, man. What's in the book tonight?" He reached for the blotter where the journal corner was sticking out. My hand shot out. I grabbed his wrist, harder than I meant to. "Don't," I said. Reed pulled back, eyes wide. "Whoa, okay, touchy, just asking." "It's personal," I said, letting go. "Sorry." I took the journal and locked it in my locker for the first time. It wasn't just a notebook anymore. It was evidence. A few nights later, the rain started. It was a heavy, relentless city rain that turned the streets into mirrors. The lobby was quiet. The only sound was the hum of the AC vent and the tires hissing on the wet pavement outside. It was nearly 2 a.m. I was making tea in the break room, cheap staff tea in a chipped mug, when I heard the front doors slide open. I walked out. Lena was standing on the mat. She was soaked. No umbrella. Her expensive coat was dark with water, her hair plastered to her neck. She was shivering. "Rough night?" I asked. She looked up. Her mascara was slightly smudged. She looked exhausted, stripped of all that armor she wore earlier in the week. "I couldn't find a cab," she said. Her teeth chattered. "I walked 6 blocks. You're freezing." "I'm fine." "You're not." I went back to the break room. I grabbed a clean mug, one I'd never used, and poured hot water over a tea bag. I brought it out to her. "It's not Earl Grey," I said. "But it's hot." She took it. Her fingers brushed mine. Her skin was ice cold. The contact sent a shock through me that I felt in my toes. She held the mug with both hands, bringing it close to her face, closing her eyes as the steam hit her skin. "Thank you," she whispered. She didn't go upstairs. She stood there, leaning against the side of the desk, dripping water onto the marble floor. "I hate this building when it rains," she said. "It feels like a cage." "I kind of like it," I said. "The world gets quiet." "That's because you get to leave in the morning," she said. She took a sip. "You have a life outside of here." "Do I?" I laughed a little. "I work nights. I sleep while everyone is awake. I write stories about people I don't know. I'm pretty invisible, Lena." It was the first time I'd used her name without the Mrs. since the night with the journal. She looked at me over the rim of the mug. "You're not invisible to me," she said. The air in the lobby changed. It got heavier, thicker. Just then, the elevator dinged. A resident from the 4th floor, Mr. Henderson, stepped out with his dog. He stopped, looking at Lena in her wet clothes, drinking tea with the night concierge. He gave a tight, condescending smile. "Everything all right, Mrs. Hartman?" he asked. "Ethan keeping you company down here?" The way he said it, it made me feel small, like I was a piece of furniture that had started talking. I opened my mouth to apologize, to step back into my place, but Lena spoke first. "Ethan is the only person in this building who noticed I was shivering, David," she said. Her voice was sharp, cutting. "Good night." Mr. Henderson blinked, muttered something, and hurried his dog out the door. Lena turned back to me. She set the empty mug on the counter. "Don't let them make you feel small," she said quietly. "You're worth 10 of them." She started toward the elevator. "Lena," I called out. She stopped. "The journal," I said. "It's in my locker. The combination is 193005. She didn't turn around. She just nodded once and stepped into the elevator. The next afternoon, I met my sister Marisa at the park. I needed to hear a voice that wasn't in my head. I needed reality. Marisa was pushing her daughter on the swing, watching me with that look she gets, like she's reading a diagnosis. "You look tired," she said. "I'm writing a lot," I said. "About the woman?" I nodded. "She read it, Marisa." Marisa stopped the swing. She turned to me fully. "She what?" "She found the journal. She read it, and she wrote back." Marisa let out a long, slow breath. She sat down on the bench next to me. "Ethan," she said, "listen to me. This isn't a story. This is your job. This is her marriage." "I know." "Do you? Because you have that look. The one you used to get when you were a kid, and you found a stray dog you knew Mom wouldn't let us keep." "She's not a dog, Marisa." "No," she said gently. "She's a wealthy, married woman living in a penthouse, and you're the guy who opens the door for her husband. Women like that, they don't leave their lives, Ethan. They just take vacations from them. Don't be her vacation." Her words stung because they felt true. That night, I went back to the journal. I wrote a story. Not an observation, but a fiction. I wrote a scene where Elle packed a bag. Not a big suitcase, just a weekend bag. I wrote about her taking off the ring and leaving it on the marble counter in the penthouse. I wrote about her walking out the front door, past the doorman, past the life she had built, and getting into a taxi without looking back. I didn't write that she came to me. I just wrote that she was free. I left the journal in my locker, but I left the latch undone. Around 3 a.m., Lena came down for mail. She looked tired. She walked past the desk. She glanced at the staff room door, then at me. "Writing anything new?" she asked. "Just a story," I said, "about a woman who decides to walk away." Her eyes searched mine. "Does she?" she asked. "Walk away?" "In the story she does." She nodded slowly. "I'd like to read that." She went into the mailroom. I busied myself with the logbook. When I looked up, she was gone. And when I checked my locker an hour later, the journal was in a slightly different position. 2 nights later, the storm hit. It was a massive system rolling off the ocean. Thunder shook the glass doors in their frames. The wind howled through the elevator shafts like a trapped animal. Around midnight, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then, with a heavy thunk, the building went dark. The emergency lights kicked on, dim, amber floodlights that cast long, strange shadows across the marble. The hum of the AC died. The music stopped. The silence was sudden and absolute. I came out from behind the desk with a flashlight. The elevator doors pried open on the ground floor. Lena stepped out. She looked pale in the emergency lighting. "The power is out in the unit," she said. "It's pitch black up there." "It's the whole block," I said. "Generator should kick in for the elevators soon, but the main power might be a while." She wrapped her arms around herself. It was getting cold fast, without the heat. "I don't want to go back up there," she admitted. "It's too big when it's dark." "Come sit," I said. I pulled two of the velvet lobby chairs closer together, away from the glass doors where the draft was coming in. I went to the emergency kit behind the desk and pulled out a thermal blanket. It was silver on one side, orange on the other. Not exactly romantic. I sat down next to her. She was shivering again. Without thinking, I shook the blanket out and draped it over her shoulders. "You take some," she said. "It's big enough." I hesitated. "Ethan, sit." I sat. I pulled the corner of the blanket over my shoulder. We sat there in the amber half-light, knees almost touching, wrapped in crinkly foil like two astronauts stranded on a strange planet. "I read the story," she said quietly. I looked at her. Her profile was soft in the shadows. "And?" "She's brave," Lena said. "Braver than me?" "I don't think so." "She left the ring," Lena whispered. "Do you know how heavy a ring like that is? It weighs 1,000 pounds. You don't just take it off." "Maybe you don't take it off all at once," I said. "Maybe you loosen it a little bit every day." She turned to look at me. We were so close. I could smell the citrus perfume, mixed with the metallic scent of the rain and the warm, living smell of her skin. A strand of hair had fallen across her cheek. My hand moved before my brain could stop it. I reached out. My fingers hovered just inches from her face. I wanted to brush that hair back. I wanted to touch her cheek. I wanted to know if she was real. She didn't pull away. Her breath hitched. Her eyes dropped to my lips, then back to my eyes. The air between us crackled, hotter than the storm outside. Ding! The generator kicked in. The main lobby lights flooded back on, harsh, bright, unforgiving. The AC roared to life. We jumped apart like we'd been burned. The blanket fell to the floor. Lena stood up, smoothing her dress, her face flushed. I should go check the unit," she stammered. "Yeah," I said, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm. "Yeah, you should." She walked to the elevator quickly. She didn't look back. I sat there in the bright, empty lobby, staring at the silver blanket on the floor, feeling like I had just fallen off a cliff. The next day, the hangover from that moment was heavy. I felt exposed. Every time a resident looked at me, I felt like they knew. But it wasn't a resident I needed to worry about. It was Daniel. He came home early the next evening. He usually walked straight past the desk with a nod, checking his phone. Tonight, he stopped. He leaned his elbows on the high marble counter. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my tuition. He smelled like expensive cologne and stress. "Ethan, right?" "Yes, sir. Good evening." "How long have you been with us, Ethan?" "About 6 months, sir." He nodded, looking around the lobby. His eyes lingered on the chairs where Lena and I had sat. "You work a lot of nights," he said. "Lena mentions you. Says you're very attentive." My blood ran cold. "I try to do a good job for all the residents, Mr. Hartman." "Of course," he said. He drummed his fingers on the marble. "We're thinking of reviewing the security protocols, tightening things up, just so everyone feels safe." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Keep up the good work, Ethan." He walked toward the elevators. 10 minutes later, Lena came down. She looked anxious. She came to the desk. "Did he say anything?" she whispered. He asked how long I've worked here, I said. He said you mentioned me. She closed her eyes. We were arguing. He said I'm never home. I said I feel more at home in the lobby than I do upstairs. I shouldn't have said it. Lena. He's suspicious, Ethan. He's not a jealous man, usually. He's possessive. There's a difference. She glanced at the security camera in the corner, the little black dome that saw everything. We have to be careful, she said. Then she changed the subject loudly as Mrs. Alvarez walked in. So if you could check on that package tomorrow, I'd appreciate it, she said, her voice bright and fake. Of course, Mrs. Hartman, I said. It felt like a lie. All of it. I didn't see her for 2 days. But when I came to work on Thursday, my locker was slightly ajar. I pulled the journal out. She had written in it again. She had responded to the story where the character leaves. She had underlined the sentence. She didn't know who she was without him, but she knew she didn't like who she was with him. Next to it, she wrote, It's not that simple. It's never just about the husband. It's about the life, the friends, the reputation, the safety. If I leave, I burn everything down. I don't know if I can survive the fire. I took a pen. I wrote back, right there in the locker room. You don't have to burn. You just have to walk. That night, around 1 a.m., she came down. We didn't talk about Daniel. We didn't talk about the power outage. We talked about endings. You always write happy endings, she said, leaning on the counter, tracing a vein in the marble. Why? Because real life doesn't give them out very often, I said. I figure someone has to. She smiled, and it was a real smile this time. It reached her eyes. Maybe you're right, she said. Maybe we need to practice them on paper first. She stayed for an hour, just talking. We laughed about Mrs. Alvarez's cat, who kept tripping the motion sensors on the 3rd floor. For a little while, it felt like we were just two normal people. No penthouse, no basement studio, no ring. As she left, she slid a folded yellow sticky note across the marble. I waited until the elevator doors closed to open it. Some endings only work on paper, but I'm glad you write them anyway. I thought we were safe. I thought we were being careful. I was wrong. 3 days later, the building manager called me in before my shift. Mr. Hartman is doing a security audit, he said, looking bored. He wants access to the camera logs for the last month. Just standard stuff, looking for blind spots. My stomach dropped through the floor. Did he say why? He's on the board, Ethan. He doesn't need a why. I went to the desk in a daze. Midnight. Daniel came down. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a sweater. He looked focused. He walked past the desk. He didn't look at me. He took a keycard out of his pocket and swiped into the security room behind the front desk. The door clicked shut. I sat there, staring at the closed door. Inside that room, there were banks of monitors. There were hard drives recording every minute of the lobby feed. He would see the night of the storm. He would see the blanket. He would see the way I almost touched her face. He would see the night she came out of the break room holding my journal. He would see us. I felt like I was going to throw up. I watched the clock. 12:15, 12:30, 12:45. Finally, the door opened. Daniel walked out. His face was unreadable. Stone. He walked to the desk. He stopped in front of me. He looked at me for a long time. It was a look of absolute, cold assessment, like he was deciding whether to crush a bug or just flick it away. He didn't say a word. He turned and walked to the elevator. I waited until he was gone. Then I ran to my locker. The journal was there. I opened it. The last 3 pages were gone. Ripped out. Jagged edges of paper were all that was left. The pages where she had written about the fire. The pages where I had written about her leaving. He had found them. I sank down onto the locker room bench, holding the mutilated book. Later that night, Lena walked through the lobby. She didn't look at the desk. She didn't slow down. She was wearing the ring. It caught the light as she pressed the elevator button. She looked straight ahead, her face a mask of perfect, icy control. She was gone. The next week was a ghost story. She was a ghost. I was a ghost. She passed through the lobby every night, but she wasn't there. "Good evening, Mrs. Hartman." "Good evening, Ethan." That was it. No pauses, no notes, no glances. She had walled herself back up in the penthouse. She had put the armor back on, and I was terrified. Every time the phone rang, I thought it was HR firing me. Every time a car pulled up, I thought it was Daniel coming to finish what he started. But nothing happened. The silence was worse than the shouting. Mrs. Alvarez noticed. "You two having a fight?" she whispered one night, leaning over the desk with a conspiratorial look. "I don't know what you mean," I said, sorting mail with shaking hands. "The air is different," she said. "It used to be warm in here. Now it's cold." Reed made it worse. "Hey, did you hear?" he said one morning during shift change. "Hartman wants to install new cameras, audio capability. Says he wants to catch improper conduct by staff." He laughed. "Probably thinks we're stealing the lobby mints." I didn't laugh. I knew I had to do something. If Daniel had seen the footage, he had leverage. He could ruin Lena. He could use it in a divorce. He could humiliate her. I waited until 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, the dead of night. I used the master code to get into the security system. It was risky. If I got caught, I wouldn't just be fired, I could be sued. I found the files. The night of the storm. Delete. The night she took the journal. Delete. The night we shared the tea. Delete. I watched the progress bar crawl across the screen. Deleting. Deleting. I was erasing us. I was taking the only proof that any of this had been real, and I was wiping it from existence. When the screen flashed, complete, I sat back in the chair. I should have felt relieved. I had protected her. I had removed the weapon Daniel could use against her. But I didn't feel relief. I felt hollow. I walked back out to the desk. The lobby was empty. The marble was cold. I looked at the spot where we had sat under the blanket. There was nothing there. Just empty chairs and silence. I told myself I was doing it for her. But as I stood there in the quiet hum of the building, I knew the truth. I was deleting the only part of my life that had felt like it mattered. The silence that followed the deletion was heavier than the files themselves. For the next week, the lobby felt like a waiting room for a diagnosis I already knew was terminal. I became obsessed with the elevator. Before, that soft ding used to make my heart jump, a reflex of hope. Now, it triggered a spike of adrenaline that tasted like metal. I'd freeze, staring at the brass doors, waiting to see who would step out. If it was Mrs. Alvarez, I'd breathe. If it was a delivery guy, I'd breathe. If it was her, I stopped breathing entirely. She didn't stop at the desk anymore. She didn't even look at the spot where the journal used to sit. She walked past me with a polite, tight nod, the kind you give a doorman you don't really know. "Good evening, Ethan." "Good evening, Mrs. Hartman." That was it. Two strangers pretending they hadn't spent months living inside each other's heads. I started filling the journal with things that didn't happen. I wrote conversations we weren't having. I wrote about her stopping, leaning over the marble, telling me she knew I deleted the footage. But the ink just sat there on the page, useless. Marisa called me on a Thursday afternoon. I was lying on my couch, staring at a water stain on the ceiling. "You sound like you have the flu," she said. "I'm fine," I lied. You're not fine. You're quiet. You're only quiet when you're writing or when you're hurting. Which is it? I think I need a new job, Riss, I said, my voice cracking. I think I need to get out of this building. Did something happen with the character? The story's over, I said, and I'm the only one still reading it. The next night, I opened the company portal on the front desk computer. The blue light washed over my hands. I pulled up the transfer request form. Reason for transfer. I stared at the blinking cursor. Reason for transfer. I fell in love with a woman who lives on the 19th floor. Reason for transfer. Her husband knows. Reason for transfer. Every time I smell citrus and cold air, I want to tear my skin off. I typed, seeking professional growth and a change of environment. I printed the form. The sound of the printer whirring in the quiet lobby sounded like a sentence being passed. I didn't submit it right away. I needed to say goodbye first, even if she never heard it. The next afternoon, instead of sleeping, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the journal. I turned to a fresh page, past the jagged tears where the old pages used to be. I wrote a letter. I didn't write, Dear Lena, I just wrote. I wrote about how the nights used to be black and white until she started walking through them. I wrote about how her handwriting in the margins made me feel like I wasn't invisible. I wrote that I didn't blame her for pulling away, that I knew the cost of staying was too high. I wrote, I'm leaving because I can't watch you walk past me like I'm furniture. I'm leaving because if I stay, I'm going to do something stupid like tell you the truth to your face. I signed it with a single initial. E. I knew I would never give it to her. That wasn't the point. It was an exorcism. I went to work that night with the transfer papers in my bag. I handed them to the night supervisor during the shift change. He looked at them, frowned, and shrugged. Takes about a week to process, he said. You sure about this? People kill for this building. The tips are good. I'm sure, I said. I put the journal in my locker. I didn't leave the door ajar this time. I clicked the padlock shut. The snap echoed in the small room. 2 hours later, Lena came through the lobby. She was wearing a sharp gray suit, talking on her phone. She looked efficient, powerful, armor on. She glanced at the Gonza desk as she passed. For a second, just a fraction of a second, her eyes flickered to the spot where I used to hide the book. Then she caught herself, looked away, and kept walking. She didn't see me. She saw the uniform. I realized then that I had already left. My body was just waiting to catch up. My last scheduled night arrived 3 days later. I hadn't told anyone I was leaving yet. I wanted to slip out the back door, quiet and unnoticed. I clocked in at 10 p.m. I ran my hand along the cool marble of the desk. I checked the mail slots. I listened to the hum of the air conditioner, that rattle I'd heard 1,000 times. I made my rounds. I joked with Mrs. Alvarez when she came down for her late-night herbal tea. You look tired, mijo, she said, patting my hand. Just a long week, I said. You take care of yourself, she said. She looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes. Don't let the ghosts keep you up. Around 2 a.m., the lobby was dead quiet. The city outside was asleep. I took the journal out of my locker. I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help it. I wanted to write one last entry, a eulogy for the job, for the lobby, for us. I placed it on the desk, right in the center. Then the printer in the back office jammed. I cursed under my breath and went back to fix it. It took maybe 5 minutes. I was wrestling with a paper tray, ink on my fingers. When I walked back out to the front desk, I stopped dead. The lobby was empty. The elevator indicator still showed on 19 Mainos. But the journal wasn't how I left it. Wrapped around the leather cover, tied in a soft, loose knot, was a silk scarf. I knew that scarf. It was pale blue with silver threading. I'd seen it around her neck a dozen times. I'd written about the way it fluttered when she walked. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached out and touched the silk. It was still warm. Tucked under the strap of the journal was a folded piece of paper. Not a sticky note. A sheet of heavy, expensive stationery. I unfolded it. Her handwriting. Pencil. I miss being on your pages. The air left my lungs. Ding! I looked up. The elevator doors slid open. She was standing there. She wasn't wearing the suit. She was wearing jeans and a soft, oversized sweater. Her feet were bare in slip-on shoes. No makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, strands escaping around her face. And no ring. I looked at her hand. The finger was bare. She didn't walk to the desk. She stood near the elevator, hugging her arms around herself. "I saw the transfer request," she said. Her voice was quiet, but in the empty lobby, it carried. "The board reviews all staff changes. It came across my desk." "I thought it was for the best," I said. My voice sounded rough. "Is it?" she asked. "Lena," I said. It was the first time I'd said her name out loud to her face. It felt like a transgression. I deleted the footage. The night of the storm. The break room. It's gone. She let out a breath, her shoulders dropping. "I know. Daniel. He went to look for it. He wanted proof." "Did he find any?" "He found the pages," she said. "The ones you tore out. He found them in the trash where you must have dropped them." I gripped the edge of the desk. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be," she said. She took a step closer. "We had a fight. The kind of fight you don't come back from. He asked if I was in love with the help." I flinched. "I told him," she continued, her eyes locking onto mine, "that the help was the only person in this building who knew what color my eyes were." She walked over to the seating area, the 2 velvet chairs where we had sat during the blackout. She sat down and placed a thermos on the low table. "Come sit," she said. "Please." I walked out from behind the desk. It felt illegal. I sat in the chair opposite her. She poured tea into the cup. Steam rose up between us. "He's not moving out," she said, staring at the steam. "Not yet. It's complicated. Assets, reputation. We're living in separate wings of the penthouse. It's a big apartment." "So you're staying?" I asked. "I'm staying," she said. "I convinced the board to drop the camera upgrades. I told them it was an invasion of privacy. Daniel was furious, but he couldn't fight me on it publicly." She looked up at me. Her eyes were tired, red-rimmed, and beautiful. "I didn't want you to leave," she whispered. "I walked past this desk every night for a week, hoping you'd say something, hoping you'd stop me." "I thought you hated me," I said. "You were so cold." "I was terrified," she admitted. "I felt like I was naked in the middle of the lobby. You have my whole soul in that book, Ethan." I looked at the journal, sitting on the desk with her scarf around it. "It's not just a book," I said. I stood up and went to get it. I brought it over to us. I held it out to her. "You can have it," I said. "If it makes you feel safer, burn it, keep it, I don't care." She stood up too. She didn't take the book. Instead, she reached out and placed her hand over mine, her fingers pressing into the leather, covering my knuckles. Her skin was cool. My hand was burning. "I don't want to burn it," she said. She stepped closer. We were inches apart. I could smell the citrus. I could see the tiny lines at the corners of her eyes. She leaned in. I thought she was going to kiss me. My whole body braced for it. But she didn't. She tilted her head forward and rested her forehead against mine. It was a heavy, exhausted, desperate touch. We stood there, breathing the same air, eyes closed. It was more intimate than any kiss I had ever had. It was an admission. A surrender. "Don't go," she whispered against my skin. "Please don't go." The next afternoon, I was called into the manager's office. I expected a lecture. Instead, he looked at me with a confused expression. "Mrs. Hartman from 19B sent a commendation to the board," he said, tapping a file. "Said you handled a security issue with utmost discretion and professionalism. Said you're an asset to the building." He slid my transfer request across the desk. "If you want to stay," he said, "we'd be happy to keep you. We can even look at a small raise." I looked at the paper. I thought about the scarf. I thought about her forehead against mine. That night, when I opened my locker, the journal was there. I opened it. On a fresh page, in that familiar slanted pencil script, she had written one line. "You don't have to move buildings to move on. We can just write a new chapter." I took out my phone. I emailed HR. Subject: transfer request. Body: please disregard my previous request. I will be remaining at my current post. I sat down at the desk. I opened the journal. I picked up my pen. I didn't write about leaving. I wrote about coming back. We built a new world, a quiet one. It wasn't like before. We were careful now. We knew where the cameras were. We knew what was at stake. In the 3 weeks that followed, a routine settled over us like a soft blanket. She would come home late. She wouldn't stop for long conversations. She would sign the logbook, maybe make a comment about the weather. But the communication didn't stop. It just went underground. She started leaving things. A sticky note on the logbook when she signed for a package. Rough day. Tell me a story. A folded piece of paper tucked under the keyboard. I saw you laughing with the new tenant in 4C. I was jealous. Is that allowed? I would leave the journal in the locker, but unlocked. She had the combination now. Sometimes I'd come back from a break and find the locker door slightly askew. I'd check the book and find a margin note next to my entry from the night before. Ethan. The city looked like a circuit board tonight. Lena, pencil. It looked like a cage to me, until I saw the lobby light was on. It wasn't perfect. It was jagged and strange. Mrs. Alvarez noticed the ring was back on Lena's finger sometimes, and off others. "She's playing a dangerous game, that one," Mrs. Alvarez muttered one night, watching Lena get into the elevator. "She's just living her life," I said, defensive. "She's living 2 lives," Mrs. Alvarez corrected, "and you're the other one." One night, Reed almost blew it. I had left a folded note from Lena on the desk. She had recommended a book. Reed reached for it. "Ooh, love letter?" he teased. I snatched it back so fast I nearly knocked over the monitor. "It's a grocery list," I snapped. Reed held up his hands. "Whoa, touchy. Must be some special milk and eggs." I hid the note in my pocket. My heart was racing. We were walking on a wire, high, up, with no net. And the crazy thing was, I didn't want to come down. A month later, the board threw a holiday mixer in the lobby. It was a nightmare. They brought in caterers, high-top tables, and a string quartet that sounded like they were strangling their instruments. The lobby was full of people, residents in cocktail dresses and suits, holding champagne flutes, laughing that fake, rich people laugh that bounces off the marble. I was on duty. I had to wear a tie. I had to stand by the door and check people in. Lena came down around 8 p.m. She was with Daniel. It was the first time I'd seen them together since the security room incident. He looked perfect. Immaculate suit, polished shoes, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had his hand on the small of her back. Possessive, steering her. Lena looked stunning in a black dress, but she looked brittle, like if you tapped her, she'd shatter. She saw me. Her eyes widened slightly. I nodded. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Hartman." "Good evening," Daniel said, barely looking at me. He handed me his coat. He didn't recognize me as the guy from the footage. To him, I was just part of the furniture again. Lena handed me her coat. Her fingers brushed mine. Just a graze. An electric shock. "Thank you, Ethan," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were screaming. I watched them all night. I watched him introduce her to people. I watched her smile on cue. I watched her sip champagne and nod at boring stories. It was a performance, and she was winning an Oscar. Halfway through the night, Mrs. Alvarez sidled up to the desk. She was holding a plastic cup of wine. "Look at them," she whispered, nodding at the Hartmans. "Perfect couple." "If you say so," I said. Mrs. Alvarez looked at me. "Some connections aren't meant for the center of the room, Ethan. They die in the light. They need the shadows to grow." She took a sip of wine and winked. "Don't stare so hard. You'll burn a hole in his jacket." When the party was winding down, Daniel went up to take a call. Lena lingered. She walked over to the desk. The catering staff was cleaning up. The string quartet was packing away their bows. "I think I left my scarf," she said loudly, for the benefit of the room. I reached under the desk, where I had stashed it earlier. "Here you go, Mrs. Hartman." She took it. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "I hate parties," she whispered. "You're very good at them," I whispered back. "I was acting," she said. "The whole time I just wanted to be sitting in the break room drinking bad tea." "The tea is still there," I said. "I know," she said. She looked towards the elevator. "But I have to go up. He's waiting." "I know." She hesitated. "We can't ever be that," she said, gesturing to the empty space where the party had been. "Center stage, bright lights." "I don't like parties anyway," said. She smiled. A real smile, small and sad and sweet. "Margins," she said. "We live in the margins." "I like the margins," I said. "That's where the notes are." She squeezed the scarf in her hand, turned, and walked to the elevator. She didn't look back. She didn't have to. By the time spring edged into the city, the lobby felt different. The air was warmer. The rain didn't feel as punishing. My life had changed, but quietly. I was taking a writing class online. I had submitted a few short stories to magazines, real ones, not just the journal. I was starting to see myself as something other than just a guy in a uniform. But I was still here. Lena was still here. Daniel traveled more now, weeks at a time. When he was gone, the air in the building grew lighter. We didn't have a grand affair. We didn't sneak into the penthouse. We didn't run away to Paris. We had moments. We had 2 a.m. conversations about books. We had shared glances in the reflection of the glass doors. We had sticky notes and margin scribbles. We had a love story that was made entirely of paper and silence. I learned to live with the ache. It wasn't a sharp pain anymore. It was a dull, constant thrum, like the sound of the city traffic. It was just a part of me. I sat at the desk one night in late April. It was raining again. I opened the journal. It was almost full now, a chronicle of a year spent watching. I wrote about Mrs. Alvarez's new grandbaby. I wrote about Reed finally getting a girlfriend. I wrote about the way the light hit the marble floor at 4 a.m. And I wrote about her. I wrote about how she looked when she came in from the rain, shaking her umbrella. I wrote about the way she smiled when she saw I had saved her mail. I realized I wasn't writing to possess her anymore. I was writing to witness her. The lobby was quiet. The AC hummed. My pen scratched against the paper. Ding! I stopped writing. I looked up at the brass doors. I didn't check the time. I didn't check the camera. I just waited. I still sit at that desk every night. And every time the elevator dings, I wonder if she's coming down for her mail or for another page. Some stories never get an ending. They just change the way you walk through your own life.